One of the most iconic staples of the internet in the 2000s is Flash games. I'm not talking about this kind of Flash, or this kind of Flash, or these kinds of Flashes. I'm talking about Club Penguin, Happy Wheels, Line Rider, Shift, The Impossible Quiz. I'm talking about secretly playing Sugar Sugar in the computer lab when the teacher was distracted. It can't be overstated just how pivotal Flash was to growing up in the 2000s. I mean, beating the world's hardest game multiple times gave me so much street cred on the playground that I'm still talking about it. And it wasn't just the heavy hitters like Newgrounds or Addicting Games. Pretty much any website at the time that was in any way geared towards children just had a fuck ton of Flash games. But eventually, you become a teenager, and these kids games just don't do it for you anymore, you know? You want something cooler, something more mature, something that aligns more with your newfound interests. And sometimes, bands would fill that niche. In my last video, I talked about bands with their own video games, but the one thing I totally glossed over was all the cheap, silly Flash games that bands occasionally did in like 2006. It was perfect for artists that didn't have the budget for a fully licensed and distributed, fleshed out game, but did have the resources to host a simple little demo on their website. So once again, I feel like it's time to channel my inner 2010 comedy game reviewer and talk about all of it. Here's the corny intro. Alright, a little bit of oversimplified background information just to get us all up to speed. The internet used to look like this. It sucked, it was ugly, and it was really difficult to use unless if you were a programmer. Then my man Tim over here created HTML, which allowed the UI to be improved, gave everything some structure, and added things like images. Not only making the internet way more accessible to the average person, but also kinda cool. Then, in 1996, the browser extension Future Flash Player dropped, and it basically took this very simple evolution and expanded upon it. Animations, interactability, sound effects, and full motion video support, and just to make things better, it was fucking free. HTML allowed the internet to become kind of cool, but Flash made the internet into an immersive experience that you'd be crazy to miss out on. Since the internet was more or less a hot new place and Flash Player made it possible to do cool things, everything was designed to be as needlessly awesome as humanly possible. Like, there is no reason why the website for the Willy Wonka movie had to have multiple games on their website. But they did. Everything did. It was awesome. Not only did Flash give us this very website, but it also allowed for fun, stupid things like being able to play Snake with the buffering symbol. Completely pointless, but also just super cool and fun. It allowed so much soul to be injected into the internet, and it was pretty magical. And I know I'm talking about a browser extension with the same energy of a preacher talking about the Bible, but really, like, it was inescapable, and most nostalgia posting is mourning Flash Player whether they know it or not. And speaking of which, it is worth keeping in mind that nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Of course, websites are going to be way more dazzling and exciting when you're 9 and just getting into internet culture. But even if you take off your rose-tinted glasses and just do a little bit of matter-of-fact side-by-side comparisons, well, yeah, it's fucking boring. Everything went from, how can we make sure this place is cool and fun and keeps people coming back for more, to, well, what gets the job done the quickest? Websites are, for the most part, no longer a destination, just a list of links that take you elsewhere. It's a fucking link tree. Like, granted, it is way more accessible and translates easily to smartphones, which are all positives, but it comes at the cost of being a soulless husk. It's practical, sure, but fuck, man, it's depressing. Like, look at Jim Carrey's 2009 Flash website. This has more swag than entire social media platforms. How insane is that? It was pretty inescapable for the longest time, but as it continued to kind of show its age and as everyone kind of moved past the need for a family computer and started getting distracted by these new things called apps, which are pretty cool, Flash's dominance of creativity on the internet kind of began to wane. That, combined with Steve Jobs personally hating it and deciding to make it not accessible on all Apple products, more or less sealed its fate in 2010 until it slowly bled out and was officially discontinued in 2020. A lot of random Flash games are lost media, not deemed important enough to be archived correctly, which, you know, is fair. But thanks to places like the Web Design Museum, Flash Museum, and the Flash emulator Ruffle, a lot of these relics can be revisited. And some of my personal favorites are bands' old websites. Not only are they super distinctly their own, but also packed with tons of fun stuff that doesn't even need to be there, most notably, their own video games. In 2009, Fall Out Boy released Fall Out Boy Trail, and it is surprisingly super enjoyable and fun. If you've ever played Oregon Trail, which I assume you have, it's basically just that, only instead of settlers trying to find a new home, it's the band trying to survive a tour. And like, it's so much more in-depth than it has any reason to be. Like, every show you play, you have to play a different rhythm game in order to sell merch, in order to get money, and it gets harder the more depressed the band members are, and you have to manage their happiness, not only by keeping them, like, fed and everything, but you also have to make sure that their homesickness is as low as possible. But you could also raise everyone's spirits by partying with random groups of people like hippies, milfs, emo kids, and so on, and these parties can either go well or end horribly. Sometimes you gotta hunt for food, and it's unreasonably difficult. Sometimes you have to cross a river, but there's surfing zombies, and you have to shoot them with the ammo that you purchased. You can strip for cash, bribe politicians. You could even party with Barack Obama at the White House, but you have to answer a pop quiz in order to look cool in front of Obama, and I did not know where Iraq was on a map, so I looked like a tool in front of Barack and was kicked out of the White House. You can die of sadness, starvation, Panic at the Disco can get killed in a drive-by, thankfully, and you could also get explosive diarrhea and then die of explosive diarrhea in the span of 1 second. There's boss battles, secret words, managing your inventory and speed, fucking gambling. I honestly feel like you don't have to care about Fall Out Boy at all to enjoy this game. It's full of random little jokes and references to alternative culture to some degree, and it's just fun. It's challenging and addictive, and yeah, some of the rhythm sections are slightly desynced enough to be annoying, and some of the humor is undeniably 2009, but I still recommend it. According to an interview with Pete Wentz, the band dedicated so much time to this game that it would be considered yeah, it's definitely 2009, alright. But scrolling away from that a little bit, it was revealed that this game was made purely because they wanted to make it and give people new ways to engage with the band. They didn't make any money from it, there's no sponsorships, it was made purely for the love of the game, and I love that. They also dropped Fallout Bird, a clone of Flappy Bird, released in 2014, and there's really not anything more to say about it, really. And speaking of stuff where there's not too much to say about it, in 2001 on the Gorillaz old website, there was a Flash game by the name of Final Drive, aka Jeep Simulator. The premise of the game is simple. You drive around, and that's it. It's an extremely bare-bones time waster, and it isn't exactly the most professionally put together. I mean, they literally forgot to put the ground in some spots, but, you know, it's cute and fun. I personally couldn't get the files to run, nor could I find a functional archive of their website from 2001, so I can't really speak to the handling, but I don't feel like we're missing out on much. But very similarly to Fall Out Boy, according to an interview with Matt Watkins, since the record company was funding the website development to begin with, they kind of just wanted to throw something fun in there just for free, just so people can have a good time. And speaking of fun, My Chemical Romance has 2 Flash games, Sweet Revenge and Helena. In Helena, you play as, you guessed it, Helena, and all you have to do is just shoot the enemies and activate the pallbearers so they could carry you to the next level. It's a very simple concept, yet surprisingly difficult in practice, since every frame you're in contact with the other funeral goers costs you a life. AKA, half of your entire health bar can disappear from kinda bumping into one enemy for a second. It's actually pretty fun, but when you realize you could just hold down the fire button for the entire game and suffer no consequences, it becomes extremely easy because you could just kind of piss bullets everywhere. But just when you think that you've mastered the game pissing on everybody, the pallbearers become your pit crew and attach wheels to your coffin, and then you have to engage in a street race while firing bullets at random hearses. And even if you constantly hold down the shoot button like you did before, sometimes it will just appear like behind you and then hit you, and I, for the life of me, can't get past it. Thankfully, however, I could find one person that did, and after you beat it, you just have to climb your way out of your grave through a series of tunnels, and then you beat the game. It's fun, it's charming, it kind of makes your hand hurt, but it's actually a pretty solid arcade experience hidden in the media tab of a band's website. And right next to it, we have game number 2, Sweet Revenge. The game starts off with the intro to Kill Bill, where a gunman violently ends a wedding ceremony. You play as the Saint, and your job is to rescue their souls while collecting keys to make your way through the cathedral and avoiding ghosts who just kind of kill you instantly. Although the concept is very bare bones and visually looks pretty easy, just trust me when I say you have to lock in so hard in order to get through this game. It's fucking crazy. Like, you could only get hit 3 times and your lives are represented by pizza slices or something. I'm not too sure. But once you get hit 3 times, you have to start again right over from the beginning. 1 ghost is fine, but the moment there's 2 ghosts with like randomized screensaver animations, it immediately becomes like way more overwhelming than you think it should be. But if you manage to survive, you can steal the groom's corpse to get him to the hospital, but first you have to navigate through what I can only describe as Flappy Bird, but in hell for some reason. Then when you finally make it to the hospital, you have to collect lightning to charge up the defibrillator while avoiding 4 viruses and the gunman while he shoots bullets and throws bombs at you. 2 ghosts is overwhelming. So this is just obscene. It's hard as fuck, but just reasonable enough that if you were a teenager in 2004, you would have easily spent hours on this game just to get your revenge. Don't worry, by the way, I promise that the entire rest of the video is just going to be focusing on the games themselves, but I needed to at least briefly talk about their Flash website from 2005 because it has so much swag, dude. Holy shit. A built-in music player with different bandwidth options, how things kind of pop and highlight when you hover over them, screensavers, wallpapers, ringtones, lyrics, the option to print your own flyers to promote the tour. I mean, just the About section alone has more personality than the entirety of most current bands' websites. And oh my god, remember 2005 merch prices? This shit would cost $50 now, and that's not even an exaggeration. Granted, a lot of these features don't work anymore, or at least don't work properly since it's not a complete archive, but it's just amazing that a band's website, even without the 2 video games, was a genuinely cool place to explore thanks to Flash Player. Their current website is a little bit of a letdown in comparison, but it's still cool to look back and see what it used to be. But moving along, we also have Atreyu's Falling Down Flash game, or more accurately, 5 Flash games. When you first start the game, you're greeted with all 5 band members, and each one has their own little game to play. Like Alex Slaughter's Cute Stuff, where you destroy cute things with an axe, jump over rainbows, and dodge the concept of love. Don't we all? There's Dan Becomes Guitar Hero, which is just Guitar Hero, but a typing game, and it is so fucking difficult, at least for me. There's Travis Makes McTreyu Burgers, which is basically just a rip of the game Burger Time. There's Mark Busts Ghosts, where you have to endlessly climb while shooting ghosts with the power of music. And Brandon Falls Down into Hell, where you must defeat scorpions and skulls while collecting ice cream cones as you descend deeper into hell. Each game is very simple to describe, yet engaging enough to keep you coming back for more. It's nothing groundbreaking, obviously, but like, it's fun, and I like the way it looks. The animation is surprisingly smooth for a lot of Flash games like this. And it's also from the same developer as Fallout Boy Trail, Jason Oda, who also made a little game called Skrillex Quest. You play as a character named P1, which is hilarious, and your kingdom is being corrupted by glitches caused by your cartridge gathering dust. So you have to use your sword to battle your way through a dungeon, save a princess, and defeat a glitch who passes a slight resemblance to Skrillex. The soundtrack mostly features the song Summit, and the boss battle plays Kill Everybody, The Devil's Den, and Bangarang, so it just kind of crescendos in a way that's remarkably hype. For it being just a mere browser game, it actually feels remarkably grand and has way more depth to it than it needs to. It's extremely cool and proof that Jason Oda is the best at the pretty niche cross-section between music and video games that require Flash to play. But stepping away from games that are good and fun, the band Mushroomhead released their own Flash game in 2006 called MushroomKombat to promote their upcoming album, Save Your Sorrow. As you probably could guess, it's basically just Mortal Kombat, but with the band members and featuring clips of then unreleased songs. It also has a plot for some reason, and the plot is insane. Alright, so according to the prologue, there was an event called the Universal Eclipse enveloping the world in total darkness for 7 days as unspeakable horrors ravaged the earth, until a mysterious light in the sky brought forth spirits, and those spirits needed a human vessel, so they took over each member of Mushroomhead for some reason. Surely there must have been better options than this, but, you know, I digress. Anyways, both of these vessels split into 2 different fractions called the War and the Way. You got all that? Alright, cool. Now, if you're anything like me, after hearing that prologue, you're probably thinking, wow, that's a lot of lore for a Flash game. I wonder what the gameplay is gonna be. And that's actually the funny thing, because there isn't any. You don't actually fight in this game. You just pick a character and then type in your code to perform a casualty. There is no gameplay. You just enter a code or you lose. And that's the whole game. It's almost like they laid all the groundwork for a game only to realize, oh fuck, we don't know how to code at the last minute. So it has like the structure and HUD and animations of a game, but absolutely nothing to do except watch it passively. A few of the casualties are fun, but most of it can be summarized with, and then he hit him very hard. Which turns an already lackluster experience into something that has no payoff whatsoever. You either type in a code, or you don't. It has the same playability as XL. The announcer also has like a very canned distortion reverb that is at times so harsh. I know it's like a stupid nitpick, but you can't even tell what he's saying half the time. Like, here is him announcing the character Gravy. That sounded like someone burping in a warehouse. Why couldn't you record that a second time? Anyways, it's not good, but it's cute. You could tell that they had a lot of fun with it, and if you're a huge fan of Mushroomhead, I'd totally recommend checking it out. But overall, this entire game could have just been like a 3-minute long video and not something masquerading as a playable experience. But you know what is playable? This piece of shit. Rammstein's Computerspiel for Windows was released on the Das Model single in 1997, and I don't really think it has an official name. From what I could find, the game is commonly referred to as Rammstein's Computerspiel for Windows, but that's less of a name and more of a description. I've also seen it been titled Ashe zu Ashe, which is a separate release they did in 1995, and I'm not really sure what the connection is. And the file itself is just rstein.exe. Maybe it's a Goosebumps reference, I don't know, but I'm just going to refer to it as Computer Spiel. And let me tell you, this game feels like a bad trip. You took too much of something, and it's coming back to bite you. It's extremely simple. There are 3 stages with 3 platforms, and all you have to do is walk to the left and shoot JPEGs of the members' faces. Along the way, you have to shoot enemies like a water monster, helicopters, cockroaches, a boat, sex dolls, nuclear waste barrels, sea urchins, a topless lady who is actually a monster, and then you beat the game. It probably sounds like I'm glossing over a lot of stuff, but no, that's it. There's no plot, you're just a random guy in a Duhawk mask shooting random things with a flamethrower. The whole game takes like 2 minutes to beat, and it's over before you know it. But speaking of games that don't really have a definitive name, in the year 2000, Deftones released a PacMan clone as a bonus feature in the limited edition special enhanced CD version of White Pony. And yeah, there's not much to say about it. You kind of get the gist just looking at it for like 3 seconds. I'm not sure if it was made with Flash or not, but it has a similar vibe, so I'm talking about it anyways. They did, however, release a 20th anniversary tribute to this game in 2021, where it's essentially just the same, but revamped, and beating it gives you an exclusive merch discount, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, however, the link is dead, which is super lame. It can still be accessed through the Wayback Machine, thankfully, but it could be difficult to find an archive where the game is actually, playable. And speaking of random cheap little games on special edition CD-ROMs in the 2000s, got Aqua. Most known for their song Barbie Girl, Aqua released their album Aquarius that came with a bunch of interactive stuff, including Aqua Pet. It's one of those virtual pet simulators that were everywhere in the 2000s, where you virtually feed it, play with it, and dress it up, and that's pretty much the extent of it. It's very rudimentary in a way that I find to be kind of cute. You could feed it hot dogs, you could play with it by putting its life in danger in a Pac-Man-esque minigame where it hopefully won't be eaten by sharks. Also included on the CD is Ruby Fighter, an Asteroids clone, and despite none of this really being groundbreaking, it's a bummer that no one really does this anymore. However, in 2011, to promote their new album If Not Now When, Incubus released Incubattle, a Flash-based retro beat-em-up where you fight music pirates, and if you collect enough leaked copies of their newest album, you get a special move. It's a pretty run-of-the-mill, simple beat-em-up that was made in just under a month. Very short experience, but It has a cheeky premise. There's the option to download it from one of the developers' websites, but if you want to play it in a higher quality, there is a 2021 remake available on itch.io as a student project, if you want to check it out. In 2010, Linkin Park released 8-Bit Rebellion, a fairly standard iOS game that you'd play on your iPod while your parents are getting divorced in the living room. Despite being a pretty run-of-the-mill 2010 app-based MMORPG, the premise is actually kind of fun. Everything in this world is 8-bit and low-res until Pixel Corp, an evil corporation, takes over and makes everything HD and glossy while launching a brainwashing campaign that favors looks over substance. Other than that, however, you just kind of beat up bad guys, customize yourself and your room, and there's social features so you can make friends Club Penguin style. There's a hub world with 6 different neighborhoods around it, and each member of Linkin Park lives in a different neighborhood, and so you can visit them, and I don't know. It's kind of cute. The soundtrack is full of 8-bit versions of Linkin Park songs, all of which translate super well, and if you beat the game, you unlock a then unreleased song called Blackbirds, which is honestly a really cool incentive to see it through till the end. There's also like a global leaderboard, and you can connect your Facebook and Twitter to it, but it's hard to tell exactly what that entails considering it's currently abandonware. But I don't know, it's worth mentioning. Okay, so, promise you won't be mad, but you probably noticed that not all of these are Flash games. I know, I'm sorry. This video is a continuation of my Bands with Video Games video. I just didn't want to label it as part 2 since those often across the board do not perform well. So I titled this video like it's a standalone thing, but it's not really. I'm a liar, and the shame will haunt me forever. But since you're still here, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards' Mars for the Rich was released on August 19th as part of their build-up to their 15th album, Infect the Rat's Nest. It's a first-person endless shooter, sort of a weird cross-section between Quake and GoldenEye. You awake in a foreign land, clutching a gun that isn't yours, something we've all been through. There's a shrine with the album cover off in the distance. Upon approaching it, it explodes, and then endless waves of rats come out. Now you have to stay alive, shoot them, pick up the ammo they drop, and it can theoretically go on forever. There's no real ending or payoff, you just kind of see how long you could stay alive, which is a life motto if anything else. Most of the sound effects are ripped directly from Quake, including Trent Reznor's signature grunt, but the menu's start game sound is ripped directly from the first Metal Gear Solid. Also, I might be overthinking it, but the opening layout is almost identical to the first encounter you have with Sniper Wolf in that game. But I'm probably just overanalyzing stuff. It's also cool that there's an entire game based on a song made to be a middle finger to Elon Musk. You'll love to see it. Despite not being a Flash game, it still has that simple, silly little time waster vibe that makes Flash games special, so I think it in spirit counts, kinda. And speaking of time waster, Hail to the King Deathbat is a third-person dungeon crawler action RPG that was originally designed to be a mobile game, but it is also available on Steam. I'm not gonna lie to you, I went into this game fully wanting to hate it, but I kind of found myself having fun. I know, my hater license has been revoked. I actually kind of enjoy the Avenged Sevenfold mobile game. I'm not happy about it either. It's fairly linear, you walk around maps hitting monsters with your sword and with magic, occasionally doing some boss battles and opening some doors. I heard that it was very difficult, but if I'm being honest, it's not that hard. It just requires a little bit of grinding for coins for better items. You know, it is a mobile game after all. It wants to extract as much time from you as possible. The progression is pretty clear, and it provides just enough challenge to be stimulating, but not enough challenge to be frustrating, and it gives you just enough dopamine hits that you find yourself thinking, like 5 more minutes. This game has major cool skeleton with blue eyes, bad to the bone riff, badass alpha wolf energy, and unfortunately, it kinda works. Don't get me wrong, it's not an amazing game. You can see the footage. It's not winning any Game of the Year awards, but for a simple mobile game, it actually succeeds at what it was going for really well. There's a whole story and universe they built out, but I don't think anyone gives a shit about that. You just fight demons, progress through the kingdom, there's some stones you gotta gather, the shop is run by an old witch. Who doesn't love that? It's nothing special, but it's a very tried and true gameplay loop. I actually didn't even know that this game existed until people told me about it in the comments of my last video, and while attempting to find this game for the very first time, I accidentally stumbled into Avenged Sevenfold's NFT store, which is a terrible combination of words. But speaking of games that I had no idea existed until people told me about it in the comments, the Dio game. It's a retro platformer where you learn magic spells and use fireballs to attack gargoyles and eyeballs, and it's kind of just a standard NES game if I'm being honest. But the people in my comments are liars. Dirty, evil liars. Because this game is actually not licensed by the band at all. Although it is based on the album Holy Diver, there is zero involvement between the developers and the band. In fact, it didn't even get a United States release until fairly recently. It also references Ozzy, Slayer, King Crimson, and others, so it's very clearly a labor of love, but it is technically, legally, not a band with a video game. But, whatever. But on the note of games that don't technically count, but I wanted to bring them up anyways, Party Cannon. Party Cannon has an N64 cartridge loaded with music, photos, and their latest music video, so although it is not a game and just a collection of media at a really low resolution, I figured I'd at least mention it because the only way to access it is with a Nintendo 64. And that's pretty cool. There's also Infected from 2005, which features all the members of Slipknot, as well as the vocals of Chimera, since both bands are featured heavily on the game's soundtrack. Rob Zombie is a playable character in Twisted Metal 4. Iron Maiden has a mobile game called Legacy of the Beast, and if I'm being honest, you couldn't pay me to pretend to be interested in this. There's also Fretless by Rob Scallon, developed by Ritual Studios, who I did actually include in the background of the last video, but people yelled at me for not including it regardless, I don't know. But it's a turn-based RPG that's extremely fun and beautiful, and the soundtrack is great. I played the entire thing on stream right when it came out, and I had a huge blast, honestly. It was so much fun. And I'm not going to talk more about it because it's awesome, and you should just play it yourself. It's great. There's also Voivod, the Nuclear Warrior, which is an upcoming action-adventure Metroidvania, and its release date is non-existent, so it's kind of hard to talk about a game that doesn't really exist yet, but it's on Steam if you'll want to wishlist it. But all honorary mentions aside, in 2022, Tallah released the Generation of Danger game to promote their upcoming album of the same name, and I think it might be one of my favorites. The album itself is a concept album around a mad scientist, and the game is a short but quality experience where you play as a victim of said mad scientist. It has a sort of Cry of Fear meets Resident Evil type vibe, and it even made me jump a few times. It's also very competently made and stands on its own as a little bite-sized horror experience. It doesn't matter if you don't care about this band at all. It's enjoyable, even in a vacuum, and it's free. Horror and metal kind of have a lot of shared DNA, so I think a short little low-poly experience like this is a match made in heaven. I would love to see some more Puppet Combo-esque adaptations of concept albums. I think that'd be really cool. But believe it or not, this is not Tallah's only game, because they also dropped the Primeval game to promote their album Primeval Obsession in 2025. Although it's not explicitly horror, it is definitely unnerving at times as you follow Anna, who is requested to sacrifice a baby by the prophetic elders who don't really give her much of a choice. It's significantly more puzzly and atmospheric. It's also very purple, which I like. And I'm not gonna lie, to only have 3 albums in their discography and 2 of them have video games paired with it is so cool. And speaking of which, Law Dispute has an interactive experience Pilgrimage that comes paired with their album Panorama. It isn't quite a game, it's more like an interactive lyric video, but I don't say that as a bad thing. Anyone who knows Law Dispute in any capacity knows that their lyrics are exceptionally raw, so having an entire experience be focused on the words being said and the feeling of these digital settings leads to a very contemplative and deeper connection to the album than it is just passively listening to it while you drive to work. It's like if a slam poetry session had a baby with Journey, so if you've ever been to an art school at any point in your life, it's probably right up your alley. Is it technically just a glorified wallpaper? I mean, a little bit, but I feel like it's really cool and I think perfectly did what it set out to do. Oh my god, ew, bro. Who gives a shit about art and poetry? Let's talk about something cool, like Insane Clown Posse and wrestling. And booze. Backyard Wrestling 2 There Goes the Neighborhood is a fighting game for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox released in 2004, and let me tell you, This game's fucking beautiful. It has an all-star lineup featuring controversial hardcore wrestler New Jack, various adult film actresses, and insane clown posse, and features a bunch of artists on the soundtrack from Bad Brains to Body Count to Mudvayne to Fall Out Boy. Did someone say Hoobastank? That's right, they're here too. The cross-section between hardcore wrestling, adult film actresses, and insane clown posse is such a hyper-specific concentration of white trash interests that I genuinely think it should be in a museum. Scathing reputation be damned. I feel like the only way to properly experience this game is in a room where there are a bunch of people smoking cigarettes indoors. I feel like that's what the developers intended. I feel like it should be played way too loud to cover up the sounds of like there being way too many siblings running around screaming and no one is watching any of them. Unfortunately, however, I just had to settle for using an emulator, so it's not quite the same experience, but it's close enough. It's a pretty by-the-numbers fighting game, only with a focus on the hardcore subsect of wrestling and the culture surrounding it. It has some cool environmental interactability, some interesting weapons, and as previously mentioned, a soundtrack that fits extremely well. The gameplay does, leave something to be desired, and the controls sometimes feel like extremely clunky and unresponsive. Also, this might be the emulator's fault, but half of the sound effects have like a 1-second delay, and it's really annoying. The roster is really impressive, even if Andrew WK looks a little, special. And the character creation is pretty cool for 2004, but pretty lackluster by modern day standards. And also, this is not a joke, 100% of the women fighters exclusively just make moaning sounds. Can you believe people gave this a bad rating? Now, it's not technically a band with a video game, but considering Insane Clown Posse is featured on the cover, in the game, in the soundtrack, and they have their own themed stage, I feel like it counts. It's extremely 2004 in ways that are both entertaining and insensitive. And speaking of games being a product of their time, in 2009, Konami announced a video game based on the Adult Swim series Metalocalypse, where you play as a Death Clock roadie, aka a clocketeer. Since you're a roadie, the whole game centers around you protecting the band and getting your hands dirty in the process. Sometimes you have to save the band from a show gone wrong, destroy coke tables, deal with biological attacks on their cruise ship, cool shit like that. All of that while keeping their hordes of crazed fans at bay using your fists. In fact, you use your fists for everything. Like, the entire game is mostly just spamming the attack button mindlessly. It's very campy hyperviolence that fits right at home on the Xbox. You can even piss on people. That's cool. However, Konami and Cartoon Network parted ways, and the game was never released. There is an unfinished dev build floating around on the internet that you could play using a 360 emulator, but it's really hard to get a good judgment of the game since the unfinished build is very unfinished. Sometimes it's missing music, sometimes it's missing voice lines, sound effects, proper animations, overlapping text, overlapping people, you name it. But like all good games based on bands, it also has a Guitar Hero-esque rhythm minigame, which I'm just a sucker for. Look at the skeleton fingers playing the notes. That's so cool. I also quite like the fact that since you're one of their roadies, you don't get multiple lives. If you die, you're just replaced and branded as another nameless roadie. You're never playing as an individual, you're just playing as cannon fodder to protect the band. And naturally, it has a sense of humor that's very stupid, but also puts a smile on my face. If this game came out, it probably would have been very mediocre, but the glimpses that we do get are fun to appreciate. This next game is really difficult to find any sort of definitive information on, so I'm just going to try my best. In 1999, or maybe 1993, I don't know, but I kind of doubt it, Alice in Chains released an interactive CD called The Journey, and it may or may not have been in the Music Bank box set. I don't know, because according to Wikipedia, this game doesn't even exist, so it's hard to find any sort of details. It does not run on modern computers, and I don't want to bother with a virtual machine, so I will be using footage from what I believe are the only 2 videos showcasing this game in existence. It starts off by stating that the devil is not behind any genre of music, and claims that the devil wants to actually destroy music as a whole, because without music, humans can become hopeless and lost without it. The fiery freedom and passion of youth stands in his way, so to combat this, the devil has reduced all the members of Alice in Chains to something no longer recognizable as humans, so we must free the band, and therefore music itself, from a hellish purgatory before it's too late. What is it with these games and having an insane prologue? I don't get it. It's a point-and-click adventure / visual novel, which you probably already gathered by looking at it, and despite it being extremely bare bones and slow, the style and sense of dread is actually quite impressive. Like, you know in movies when they finally inspect the serial killer's lair and find his insane ramblings? It's like that, but in an interactive video game way, and I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but it is interesting. You pay off ransoms, walk past tortured souls who've been deformed into trees, you walk past evil sheriffs who yell at you, and you also use music to free everyone's souls, just kind of using a trumpet. I gotta be real with you guys, I have no clue how the fuck I'm supposed to discuss this game. The whole thing feels like when you watch an art house film and you liked it, but boy did you not understand any of it, but you don't want to admit that because it's embarrassing. It's like that, so I don't know what to say. It's just a complete fever dream of themes. It's like the kind of game that the kid from Skinamarink would play. And since there is extremely limited information on this game, I don't even know if I've seen all of it. It ends so abruptly and awkwardly, and I have no idea if the story got resolved or like what happened. The moment I found myself kinda actually starting to get settled into the universe, all known footage that I could find just kinda stops. So I don't really know what to say. Every other game has been remarkably straightforward, but trying to talk about this game feels like trying to describe a dream you had after getting a concussion. So, I'm sorry if this segment was underwhelming, but I tried my best. But in a very similar yet undeniably worse vein, Incubus also has Cavern of Fentropa, which came on their 1997 album Science. That's right, they're on this list twice, but this one is much different. While Alice in Chains game did have a plot that was just kind of very convoluted, I don't actually know if this game has a plot. Like, really? It sort of just feels like, you know the genre of person that considers themselves hippies, but it's very clear that they're just unmedicated conspiracy theorists? The game just feels like you're stuck in a conversation with one of them. Like, man, you sure are talking a lot, but man, I don't think you're saying anything at all. But needlessly long story short, you have to navigate these caves to save humanity or whatever, and it's like seemingly random. I think it attempts to be funny, or maybe it's trying to be deep. I don't know, but I don't like it. It seems like something that Grimes would think is cool, and I mean that as an insult.
You are metaphoric to a being of light who carries information necessary in modifying and evolving human existence. I am a vitamin for the hibernating human animal. Correct.
I personally hate it when people interact with any remotely weird media with the take, they must have been on drugs when they made this. But I gotta be real with you, man. If someone I knew showed me this project, my immediate gut reaction would be to stage an intervention. The whole experience just makes you feel like you got hit in the head really hard, and it's a very bold swing, I'll give them that, but holy shit, did they miss. However, in 2020, Weezer released a game, also developed by Jason Oda, called The End of the Game, to promote the song of the same name. The game is centered around defeating the alien from the music video, and most of the gameplay just boils down to running around and shooting it with a laser, occasionally dodging giant feet. If you get close to dying, the game will give you 5 additional lives in exchange for you signing up for their mailing list, and that's just so fucking funny to me. And if you manage to defeat the alien, in order to collect your prize at the end of the game, you have to go through a gauntlet of traps and occasionally pass a security check so only real fans can get to the end. And it's just, I love this. There's not a whole lot to say about it. It's a decent little 5-minute experience that I recommend you check out. But up next is a game that you should not check out. You should stay far, far away from it, in fact. and I'm talking about Omikron, the Nomad Soul. Omikron, the Nomad Soul came out in 1999 and is the debut release from writer-director David Cage, so you know it's gonna be good. It is also the first game developed by Quantic Dream, both of which went on to create Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit Become Human. But this game seems to stand out the most, because it's the only game they've ever made that they seemingly want everyone to forget about. And also, if you couldn't tell from the cover, David Bowie plays 2 different characters as well as produced 10 original songs for the game's soundtrack. A portal on your screen opens up and a detective falls out. He has connected his world of Omikron to our world. He gives us his body, to which the player then transfers our soul into his vessel that we are then able to control using the computer. Is it a bit out there and corny? Yes, but I love it when the person engaging with the media is, within the law of the universe, part of the story. I really like that. It only looks like you're playing a video game, but in reality, you are using a computer to pilot someone in another dimension. And unless if you defeat the evil in Omikron, your soul in real life will be damned to hell in this electronic vessel unless you beat him in the game. Fucking heavy shit, right? It's awesome. So you're piloting this detective and no one believes that you're another person controlling him through your computer, but you eventually learn that this person originally went missing during an investigation of serial killings, so you now have to pick up where he last left off. But for some reason, all the higher-ups at the police station have classified all the information, and it appears that they are trying to get rid of you. A futuristic AI controls everything, the place is run by a dictator, there's demons, anti-government organizations trying to dismantle the demons and the dictator and the AI, and all that is being led by a mythical being that exists within computer networks played by David Bowie. If it sounds like I'm struggling to recap the story, please keep in mind that the story is 20 hours long and is barely cohesive to begin with, so boiling it down to a paragraph is really hard. Now you're probably thinking, well, since David Bowie is involved, I'm sure the soundtrack is great. And I have some bad news. There's some funky tracks, some ambient tracks. Almost every song is basically just a 20-second loop of a basic drum pattern. But it also has one of the worst songs I think I've ever heard in my life, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm gonna play it for you, but I need to preface it by saying this is not a joke, okay? This is a real song in the actual game soundtrack. I am not fucking with you. This is real. Here it is. Isn't that fucking awful? This game has so much. There's mech battles, first-person shooting segments, side-profile fighting segments, puzzles, you can drive, there's some really interesting character designs and also locations. It's a giant open world game, which for 1999 is actually pretty dope. It's even jokingly referred to as Cyberpunk 1999, which honestly is an apt comparison. Like, there's a point where if you go into this specific store and buy this specific item you heard about in secret, the store owner will buzz you into a secret underground fighting club where you can then compete for money. And it genuinely feels like something straight out of Cyberpunk 2077 or Red Dead Redemption 2. There are glimpses where it is definitely way ahead of its time. Like, it even has mechanics where you can soul transfer, and if you die, your soul just kind of gets put into the body of the next person that interacts with your corpse. And it's basically doing Slitterhead 25 years before Slitterhead. As a result, there are multiple different ways to approach different problems. Like, you could have a shootout to get past this area, or you could transfer your consciousness into one of the guards, and therefore you're able to walk around as one of them, completely bypassing having to fight anyone. At one point, and this is totally real by the way, you can take over the body of David Bowie's wife and then seduce information out of people. It's awesome. Like, you could have a giant mech battle, or you could find a secret compartment at your house, feed a pet lizard, and then that lizard gives you a key, and then you could use that key to unlock a chest, and inside the chest is a sleeping pill prescription that you could get filled at the pharmacy, and then you can get your boss some coffee, but the coffee is not sold at any restaurant or supermarket, even though it totally fucking should be. It is only sold exclusively at this one vending machine right here. You could then combine the sleeping pills with the coffee, knock out your boss to get her security clearance badge, which then, then you could get past the mech battle. It's simple. Despite this game being very cool, it's also extremely obtuse, hard to get around, confusing, and you never really know what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to do it. And nearly every step along the way is perfectly crafted to just be as much of a slog as humanly fucking possible. Like, when you're playing a game and you hit a point where you find yourself thinking, what does it want me to do? Where does the game want me to go? That is like 85% of playing this game, which once again takes like 20 hours. That's not a good ratio. It's so vast yet so empty. It's hard to tell what's a door and what isn't. The camera sometimes just completely loses you. You swim like a fucking idiot. You run like an absolute dork. At one point you refer to yourself as like a submissive good boy, and at one point you admire a young woman and say, yum yum. None of that feels necessary. I find a lot of charm in older games, but even I will admit that there are times in this game where it is just fucking ugly. The layout is so rudimentary that you'd think you wouldn't get lost, but you will. Constantly. It's so fucking annoying. And speaking of annoying, have I mentioned that moving and doing anything sucks really hard? 'Cause it does. Like, in order to use this elevator, you have to interact with this panel. So naturally, you walk over to the panel and interact with it, right? Wrong, you idiot. You're actually supposed to be 3 feet away from the panel, then you can use it. And the elevator at your police headquarters probably works the same, right? Of course it doesn't. Have you learned nothing? This game sucks. In order to use this elevator, you shouldn't be facing any panel at all. In fact, in order to choose a floor, you have to be facing the open door, but only at this specific angle. Then you could choose what floor you want to go to. And all this is just for the elevators. Believe me when I say, every aspect of this game is like this. It's like if Deus Ex, System Shock, and Half-Life all had a baby together, but they also put that baby in a microwave. Like, it's very impressive, but also super unfortunate, and you could see why it only gets talked about in hushed voices by people who just want everyone to forget about it. The first-person shooting segments with the mouse and keyboard are actually decently fun, but enemies will appear out of nowhere in ways that don't make any logical sense. And remember how I said that it takes a really long time to just turn around? That paired with enemies just appearing behind you means that sometimes half of your health bar will just disappear and there's literally nothing you can do about it. It's awesome. And when I say that enemies appear out of nowhere, that's not a skill issue. I mean it. It defies the logic of how you're supposed to usually play shooting games. You'll go into a room, clear it, make sure that there's no one left, and then you go to leave and then you're getting shot from the room that you just cleared. What am I supposed to fucking do about that, man? It's so frustrating because at its core, I think this game is really cool. Doing stuff is really cool. Figuring out stuff is rewarding. And I found myself interested in the story and the world, but so much of it is a slog. And with all the good stuff so spread out, it just makes it not worth it. I'm sorry for talking about this game for so long. It's just rare that a random game with David Bowie on the cover would be such an interesting shit show. If you feel like playing it, please don't, but if you're going to anyways, don't buy it on Steam. It won't work, and it will be very frustrating, speaking from experience. And speaking of games that kinda struggle to open, Tesseract's War of Being. This game serves as an expansion of the 2023 album of the same name about 2 people on a spaceship who crash land onto a planet called the Strange Land, where there's like evil samurais or something. I don't know, I didn't really understand that part. There's 5 different levels, and each one you have to find a member of the band, unlock a crate, and recover memories of the album's protagonists. It's pretty simple, but visually quite cool. Genuinely breathtaking at times. Except for these stairs. These stairs are kind of fucking ugly. There's a random ghost child who totally #rocks out to Tesseract in a moment that feels a little masturbatory, if I'm being honest. It's stuck in early access purgatory, but it's a decent little game that's also fully VR compatible, which is a nice feature. Another decent little game is Savant's Ascent. It's an arcadey shoot-'em-up, bullet hell adjacent little game that is just simple enough to be pick up and play, but just difficult enough that you want to sink more time into it in order to get better. There's not really a plot, but there also doesn't really need to be one. You know, you're Savant, you shoot things and jump around to a soundtrack that fucking rules. What more could you ask for, you know? There's also Ascent Remix that came out in 2023, which is a remake/expansion thing that looks pretty cool. I actually played this game when it first came out in 2013. I just didn't include it in my last video because I totally forgot it existed. And the last game I want to talk about isn't even a video game, but I wanted to talk about it anyways. Year Zero is a 2007 ARG from 42 Entertainment built around the concept album of the same name. It is pieced together through various broken websites, leaked songs with images in the spectrogram, Morse codes, voicemails, wiretaps, Bible verses, real addresses of real paintings, comic books, media from USB drives picked up at Nine Inch Nails shows, getting delivered ammo boxes with phones directing you to locations where people who follow all the instructions will then get picked up and made to attend a resistance meeting, which then segues into a private Nine Inch Nails show that then gets shut down by a SWAT team because you're getting too close to the truth. This ARG is so expansive that it would take hours to explain it thoroughly, so just accept that these are going to be footnotes of footnotes, and I highly encourage you to check it all out on your own. It's very cool. The story takes place in the far-off future of 2022, where the US government devolves into a Christian fundamentalist theocracy in a near-constant war abroad as to expand their influence worldwide, and people who disagree either disappear from their homes at night or get detained by the government's secret police. Imagine that. But this all begs the question, if this takes place in the totally fictional future of 2022, how are we reading it? Good question. All of the clues from this ARG have been sent back in time as a warning so that we can prevent this terrible future from happening, and it looks like we failed. There's also tons of other stuff like the presence, a ghostly hand that appears in the sky and may or may not be God, mind-controlled drugs, resistance groups, all the companies and bureaus overseeing everything. It's extremely in-depth and cool and genuinely chilling at times to read. These documents about the government foot soldiers that they send door to door being given drugs that blur the line between killing and fucking in ways that are just really sick to read. Throughout multiple steps of the ARG, you will be threatened by the government for interacting with anti-American media. Your computer has been tagged, your phone lines will now be monitored, and your mail will be opened. The Bureau of Morality has logged your browsing history and will be analyzing it. Your driver's license, marriage license, and parenting license have been revoked. Any children you have or will have will be confiscated. Holy shit. They really do a great job at making it feel like you're accessing forbidden information. It really puts you on edge and makes you feel gross.
Bud, get me out of my shit. Mia? Listen, Robin. I need you to take care of my dog, okay? The food is...
And I know I'm skipping over like 80% of it, but I kind of found myself thinking, wow, this seems almost too expansive to just be an ARG for an album. And I was right, because there were originally plans for a film adaptation of this story. These plans originally morphed into a potential HBO original series that Trent Reznor had an entire world Bible put together for, but it just never materialized. Granted, this is not a video game, and I only barely scratched the surface of this ARG, but I wanted to talk about it anyways because, I don't know, I think it's cool. I'm positive that there are tons of other bands with video games out there, but I feel like now's a good place to call it. Since a lot of the games I talked about today were brought to my attention from you guys in the comments, I wanted to, extend a little thank you, so here's a little merch discount if you want. You guys did technically help write it after all, so it's the least I could do. Huge thanks to all my Patreon supporters for keeping me afloat. If you want to join this list of names, as well as help support me and get exclusive content, I don't know, consider checking it out maybe. I also streamed a lot of the research for this video over on Twitch, so check that out if you want, as well as all these things. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm very tired, so I'm gonna go take a nap now. I'll see you next time. Love you. Bye.